I was just at the UCLA, and the Jewish students were doing a comedy. It was very funny. And after the comedy, I thought, wait a minute, there was a library I used to visit when I was learning smicha over there on the campus. There was a program by Chabad. And I'd love to go to that library in my free time. And even there was a boy, Moti Lipsker, he's in Chinuch, he's in Chabad Chinuch now. That's a Chabad right here. This is a Chabad house you just saw. That one right there. It's beautiful. So he's in Chinuch, and he would tell me, yeah, this library has a lot of Jewish books. And Jewish meaning the approved books that we have on the shelf, like Medrash, Gemara, Zayar. And he said to me, if a library has these books, that makes them prestigious. So when they include more books, it makes them more prestigious in sort, right? So I never had a chance to visit this library. It's been, I think it's over 10 years. Can't remember the exact date. Charles Young. It's the university library, and there are many libraries on the university, very interestingly. Asian, this, that, study of everything. So we used to go there. One time I saw on the shelf a book about Sigmund Freud, and on the book it said, on the cover it said, A Godless Jew. So I'm going to look it up and see if it's on Amazon or not. You have to understand, when I see it, it's attractive. I'm looking at it, it's attractive. It's interesting because I'm thinking, we studied in Tanya. The Tanya says that every Jew has a godliness in him. There's no evidence to that. This is Brentwood. Beautiful houses here. There's no evidence to that. And Rabbi Khan also did a whole shir called Mehusam Shel Yisrael. What's the, so to speak, essence of a Jew? Is a self-sacrifice for God, to get himself killed for the Kedushas Hashem, which Kiddush Hashem doesn't really mean kill yourself. Even Meir Kahana says when a Jew is weak and he gets killed, it's not a Kiddush Hashem. So there are different theologies out there. But the book was attractive, and then later on, when I was in Great Neck, I met this Russian Jewish gynecologist who would daven at Chabad. His name was Boris Petrakovsky, and he was into Rebbes, he was into Hasidus, but he didn't have the beard, and he didn't really, you don't need the beard, but in that time, in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, it became a prerequisite. Not a big deal at all. A lot of Mekubalim didn't have beards. But he liked them, and he would say, I respect these Rebbes because if I would be doing what they're doing, meaning that they devote 24/7 to Torah, he didn't understand that he's mixing Rebbes and academics. Academics devote 30 years to a subject, and they deserve a lot of respect for that. But he thought Rebbes. And I'll give you an example. When the Biala Rebbe would come to town, he would give him his Mizrach seat, the front seat, you know, he would be Mechabed him. The Biala Rebbe can't learn, and he can't daven. He's not good at anything. So he travels, and he calls himself the Biala Rebbe. And believers, women and children, you know, and women in the traditional sense. Women are very intelligent and educated. We're talking about in the Hasidic sense. They're believers, little girls, Rebbe, I love you, and they get a picture and a keychain. So this is what he said. Now listen, he's one of the best doctors in the world, because Reagan was by him, Nancy Reagan. I think the Shah's wife was by him. He had pictures on his wall in his office. He let us in there, and he showed us that very famous people who would travel from the entire world. Not only famous people, but people who just came to money. Like one Russian family, there was some oil field under their house and their farm. They ended up making a few $1 million like right away, and then they got, what if you know about digging and oil and it's your property, so they were rich. And the woman needed help. She'd come to him, but he would work for a hospital. He never had a private practice. He said, if I have a private practice, I'll be rich overnight. However, this guy wasn't that intelligent when it came to the philosophical aspect, and I'll show you why. Because, so I told him, we talked about this, and I said, I saw a book, it was about Sigmund Freud. I knew nothing about Freud, I only knew about the cover of the book. I never read the book. And I said, the name of the book is A Godless Jew. And he said, it's impossible that a Jew should be godless. Of course, he's hearing Dvar Titus from Rabbi Gazinski, and the guy's surrounding himself in Chabad. A bunch of people, some alcoholics, some not, some mostly lawyers. I remember there was Greg Bitterman, and there was Yerushalmi, David Yerushalmi. These were lawyers. Lawyers, Orthodox, it just falls into place. They love the law. They love, halacha, when to pray and when to pray. So, and they were successful. There were very little poor people there. Kings Point, New York. What do you expect? Anyway, he would consider himself the poorest person there because he said, "I don't own a private practice. I'm a salary man. I'm not a business owner like these rich guys." And he said, "I don't believe you. You got to show me that book." Now, the book I saw in California in the Charles Young Library, I never read it, but it was just the opening of an argument. I saw a book that says "A Godless Jew" and the cover is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was not a godless Jew. He wasn't a godly Jew. He was a psychoanalysis. That was his thing. You think he had time for two people trying to discuss if he has a bris, he doesn't have a bris? What the fuck does he care? That wasn't what he did for a living. Same thing with Karl Marx. The three big guys, Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud. What did Karl Marx do? Do you think he spoke about religion? He didn't. He said, finish with the slave. Karl Marx's father was a rabbi. And he was Marx was mostly dealing with the church, the abuses that the church was doing to its people, and to the Jews, anti-Semitism. He said, get rid of slave labor, and then all this bullshit would get rid of. When these people stop thanking God for their crumbs, religion will be gone. Was he right? Not really. We got rid of hunger in America, and you still have religion, so he didn't get it right. But he had a very strong point. Because back then, religion was not like it is today. Today, it morphed into something new. And I walked by that library, and it was closing at 11 o'clock, and I just finished to watch these students do their thing. It was really interesting. And the library had a good few memories there. And one of them was a black girl saw me putting up the Hanukkah menorah there, outside the library. And she said to me, "Oh, hi, and this, I read Chaim Potok," she said. I had no idea about Chaim Potok, but I knew that she knew about Judaism pretty nicely. And she was a nice academic. She had the glasses. It was very different than the black girls that we grew up around in Brooklyn, that we didn't know them, but we didn't know anything. So, these were like refreshing little tidbits, but nothing happens. You don't stop being the tad racist that you grew up with. It doesn't go away in a second. It just sparks an idea like, hey, maybe after all, and she was so sweet and nice and intelligent, and she just mentioned, I read Chaim, because I was like, what do you know about this, and what do you know about that? They just wanted to know what she knew, and how do you know about this, and she knew her stuff. Very interesting.